The sun hung low in the sky, casting an amber glow over the sleepy coastal town. It was the kind of place where time seemed to slow, where families came to escape the rush of everyday life. For Lisa Harrington, it was supposed to be the perfect getaway, a chance for her husband, Mark, and their 5-year-old daughter, Emily, to unwind and reconnect. They had planned the trip for months, mapping out every detail from the quaint cottage they'd rented to the long days they'd spend by the sea collecting shells and building sandcastles. But nothing could have prepared Lisa for the nightmare that would unfold. It started like any other day. Mark had woken early, excited to take Emily on a morning walk along the beach. "We'll be back before breakfast," he'd said, kissing Lisa on the forehead as she stirred in bed. Emily, clutching her favorite stuffed bunny, had giggled and waved as they slipped out the door. Lisa had smiled, rolling over and pulling the covers closer, grateful for the rare moment of solitude. She had no idea it would be the last time she'd see them. Hours passed, and the sun climbed higher in the sky. Lisa, now dressed and sipping coffee on the porch, began to wonder where they were. The beach was only a short walk away, and Mark had been adamant about sticking to the schedule. By mid-morning, her worry had turned into panic. She called his cell phone repeatedly, each time hearing it ring and then go to voicemail. She decided to retrace their steps, her heart pounding as she scanned the shoreline for any sign of them. The beach was deserted. The only sounds the gentle lapping of waves and the occasional call of a seagull. Lisa flagged down a lifeguard, explaining her situation through shaky breaths. Soon, local authorities were involved, scouring the beach and surrounding areas. The search stretched into the afternoon, then into the evening. By nightfall, Mark and Emily were officially declared missing. Lisa's once idyllic vacation had turned into a waking nightmare, the echoes of her daughter's laughter haunting her as she sat alone in the cold, empty cottage. The days that followed were a blur of interviews, search parties, and sleepless nights. Police questioned everyone, locals, tourists, even Lisa herself, but no one had seen or heard anything unusual. There were no signs of a struggle, no clues to indicate where Mark and Emily might have gone. Their footprints on the beach had disappeared with the tide, leaving behind nothing but questions. Lisa clung to hope, but as weeks turned into months, that hope began to waver. In the years that followed, Lisa's life became a shell of what it once was. She moved back to the city, but she could never escape the weight of her grief. Her nights were plagued by nightmares, her days filled with an endless loop of what-ifs. Every time the phone rang, she'd leap to answer it, hoping for news. She kept their belongings just as they'd left them, unable to let go of the life they'd shared. The world moved on, but Lisa remained frozen in time, trapped in the memory of that fateful day. Then, 2 decades later, everything changed. It was an ordinary Tuesday when the letter arrived. Lisa had just returned from the grocery store, her arms full of bags. She almost didn't notice the envelope mixed in with the usual stack of bills and advertisements. It was plain, unremarkable, with no return address. She opened it absent-mindedly, not expecting much. But as her eyes scanned the page, her breath caught in her throat. The letter was handwritten, the words scrawled in a hurried but familiar script. "Lisa," it began, "I know this will come as a shock, but I need you to know that we're alive. Emily is safe. I can't explain everything in this letter, but please believe me when I say we had no choice. I never wanted to leave you. I will find a way to explain everything soon. Until then, trust no one. Mark." The paper fell from Lisa's hands, fluttering to the floor. Her mind raced, a flood of emotions threatening to overwhelm her. Relief, anger, confusion, it was all too much. 22 years of silence, of heartache, and now this? She picked up the letter again, her hands trembling. The words blurred as tears filled her eyes. Was it real? Could it really be from Mark? And if so, why had he stayed away for so long? Lisa knew she couldn't ignore the letter, but she also couldn't take it at face value. Too much time had passed, too many questions remained unanswered. She called the police, hoping they could verify its authenticity, but their response was cautious. "We'll look into it, the officer said. But after all these years, we need to proceed carefully. The letter became an obsession for Lisa. She examined every detail, searching for hidden clues. The handwriting matched Mark's perfectly, down to the slight slant in his T's and the way he looped his G's. But there was no postmark on the envelope, no indication of where it had come from. She thought about the phrase, "trust no one," and what it could mean. Was Mark in danger? Was Emily? Or was this some cruel hoax, designed to prey on her pain? Days turned into weeks, and Lisa found herself spiraling. She couldn't focus on work or sleep at night. Her mind kept replaying the last morning she'd seen them, the way Mark had smiled at her, the sound of Emily's laughter. The letter had opened old wounds, and now she was desperate for answers. She reached out to a private investigator, a man named David who specialized in missing persons cases. "I don't care how long it takes or what it costs," she told him. "I need to know the truth." David agreed to take the case, though he warned her it wouldn't be easy. "After 22 years, most leads go cold," he said. "But this letter could be the break we need." He started by analyzing the paper and ink, trying to trace its origins. Meanwhile, Lisa revisited old memories, searching for anything she might have overlooked. She dug through photo albums, journals, and even Mark's old emails, looking for clues. One evening, as she was sorting through a box of keepsakes, she found something she hadn't seen in years, a postcard Mark had sent her shortly after they first met. It was from a small town upstate, a place he'd always talked about visiting again. The handwriting on the postcard was identical to the letter. Lisa's heart raced as she showed it to David. "Do you think this could mean something?" she asked. "It's possible," he said. "If Mark had a connection to this town, it might be worth checking out. But we need to be careful. If he said to trust no one, there's a reason for that." As Lisa prepared for the trip, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. The phone calls with no one on the other end, the car parked down the street for hours. It all felt too coincidental. She confided in David, who assured her they'd take precautions. "This could be nothing," he said. "But we can't rule out the possibility that someone doesn't want you to find them." The tension mounted as Lisa set out for the town, her heart heavy with anticipation. She didn't know what she'd find or if she'd find anything at all. But one thing was certain, she couldn't stop now. The truth was out there, waiting to be uncovered, and she was determined to bring her family back, no matter what it took. Lisa's hands gripped the steering wheel tightly as she drove toward the small town mentioned in Mark's old postcard. The road was flanked by dense woods on either side, and the late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the asphalt. Her mind was a storm of questions and memories, each one battling for her attention. What had happened to Mark and Emily all those years ago? Why had Mark sent the letter now, after so much time had passed? And what did he mean when he warned her to trust no one? The words echoed in her mind, adding an edge of paranoia to her already heightened anxiety. She arrived in the town just as the sun dipped below the horizon. It was quaint and quiet, the kind of place where everyone knew everyone else. Main Street was lined with small shops and cafes, their windows glowing warmly in the twilight. Lisa parked her car and stepped out, feeling the weight of her mission settle over her. She didn't know where to start, but something about this place felt significant. She could almost picture Mark walking these streets, Emily skipping beside him, her laughter ringing out like a melody. Her first stop was a small inn at the edge of town. The elderly woman behind the counter greeted her with a kind smile, and Lisa checked in, using an alias just to be safe. As she settled into her room, she laid out the letter and the postcard on the small desk, staring at them as if they might reveal their secrets if she looked hard enough. David had promised to check in later that evening, but for now, Lisa was on her own. She decided to take a walk, hoping the fresh air might clear her mind and, perhaps, lead her to something she hadn't considered. The streets were nearly empty, the quiet broken only by the occasional sound of a car passing or a dog barking in the distance. Lisa wandered aimlessly, her eyes scanning every building and alleyway. She didn't know what she was looking for, but she felt a strange pull, as if something unseen was guiding her steps. She stopped in front of a small diner, its neon sign flickering softly. The place was nearly empty, but something about it felt inviting. She stepped inside and took a seat at the counter. The waitress, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and a tired smile, handed her a menu. Passing through, she asked, her tone casual but curious. "Something like that," Lisa replied, forcing a smile. "It's a nice town?" The waitress nodded. "Not much happens around here, but that's how most folks like it." "Where are you headed?" Lisa hesitated, unsure of how much to reveal. "Just exploring," she said finally. "I've been looking into some family history, and this place came up." The waitress raised an eyebrow, her interest piqued. "Well, if you need any help, let me know. I've lived here my whole life. Not much I don't know about this town." Lisa thanked her and ordered a coffee, her mind racing. The woman's offer seemed genuine, but Mark's warning was a constant whisper in the back of her mind. "Trust no one." She sipped her coffee slowly, her eyes drifting to a bulletin board near the entrance. It was covered with flyers and notices, but one in particular caught her attention. It was an old missing person poster, faded and yellowed with age. Lisa's heart skipped a beat as she recognized the face. It was Mark. His name and description were printed below, along with a contact number she didn't recognize. She stood up and walked over to the board, her hands trembling as she reached out to touch the poster. How had this ended up here? And who had put it up? The waitress noticed her staring and walked over. "That's been up there for years," she said. "I remember when they put it up. A man and his daughter went missing a long time ago. Never did hear what happened to them." Lisa turned to her, trying to keep her voice steady. "Do you know who put it up?" The waitress frowned, thinking. "It was a while back. I think it might have been someone from out of town. They came through asking a lot of questions, then left just as quickly. No one really talked about it after that." Lisa thanked her and left the diner, her mind racing. Someone had been looking for Mark and Emily, but who? And why hadn't she ever heard about this before? She walked back to the inn, her footsteps quick and purposeful. When she reached her room, she called David, filling him in on what she discovered. He listened carefully, his voice calm but laced with concern. "That's definitely a lead," he said. "I'll dig into the contact number on the poster. It might give us a clue about who put it up. In the meantime, be careful. If someone didn't want you to find that letter, they might not want you following this trail either." Lisa nodded, though David couldn't see her. She thanked him and hung up, her eyes drifting back to the letter on the desk. Mark's words felt heavier now, their meaning more urgent. "Trust no one." The phrase repeated in her mind like a mantra, shaping every decision she made. The next morning, Lisa decided to visit the local library, hoping to find more information about the town and its history. The librarian, a soft-spoken woman with glasses perched on the edge of her nose, helped her find old newspapers and town records. Lisa pored over them for hours, her eyes scanning for anything that might connect to Mark or Emily. She found a few articles about missing persons cases, but none of them seemed relevant. Just as she was about to give up, she stumbled across a small article buried in the back pages of an old issue. It mentioned a fire at a nearby cabin, the cause of which had never been determined. The date matched the year Mark and Emily disappeared. Lisa's heart raced as she read the details. The fire had been reported by a hiker who saw smoke from a nearby trail. By the time firefighters arrived, the cabin was almost completely destroyed. No bodies were found, but neighbors reported seeing a man and a child staying there in the weeks leading up to the fire. The article didn't mention any names, but Lisa couldn't shake the feeling that it was connected. She copied down the address of the cabin and decided to visit it later that day. The drive was short but nerve-wracking, the winding road leading her deeper into the woods. When she arrived, she found nothing but the charred remains of the structure, overgrown with weeds and vines. She stepped out of the car and walked toward the site, her heart pounding. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and decaying wood, and the silence was almost suffocating. As she stood there, staring at the ruins, she noticed something glinting in the sunlight. She knelt down and brushed away the dirt, revealing a small, rusted locket. She opened it carefully, her breath catching as she saw the tiny photograph inside. It was of Emily, her bright smile frozen in time. Lisa clutched the locket to her chest, tears streaming down her face. It was proof, however small, that they had been here. But what had happened to them after the fire? And why had Mark stayed silent for so long? The answers felt closer than ever, but they also felt more dangerous. Lisa knew she was on the right path, but she also knew she was venturing into unknown territory. The questions only seemed to multiply, and the stakes continued to rise. She couldn't stop now, not when she was so close to the truth. But as she got back into her car and started the engine, she couldn't shake the feeling that someone, somewhere, was watching her every move. Lisa gripped the steering wheel tightly, her mind spinning as she drove back toward the town. The locket sat on the passenger seat, a silent reminder of how close she was getting, but also how much she still didn't know. The forest seemed darker now, the trees pressing in around her, as if they were trying to keep her from uncovering the truth. She couldn't shake the feeling that she was being followed. Every time she glanced in the rearview mirror, it seemed like there was a car or shadow just far enough away to stay unnoticed, but close enough to unsettle her. When she reached the town, Lisa didn't go back to the inn right away. She decided to take a detour, parking her car on a quiet side street and walking back toward Main Street. She tucked the locket into her pocket and tried to calm the nerves dancing in her chest. If someone was watching her, they wouldn't know where she was staying, at least not yet. The thought brought her little comfort as she realized she had no idea who she could trust. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. It was David. She answered quickly, grateful for the familiar voice. He sounded tense, his words quick and to the point. "I traced the number on that missing person poster," he said. "It belongs to a private investigator, a guy named Joe Langston. He's based out of the next town over. He's been in business for decades, mostly handling cold cases and missing persons. I don't know if he's still alive, but if he is, he might know something." Lisa felt a glimmer of hope. "Do you have an address?" David gave her the information, and she wrote it down on the back of a receipt she found in her bag. They agreed to stay in touch, and Lisa hung up, her determination renewed. She decided to head straight to Joe's office. If anyone had answers, it was him. The drive to the neighboring town was uneventful, but Lisa couldn't shake the sense of unease that had followed her since she found the locket. When she arrived at Joe's office, she found a small, nondescript building tucked between a pawn shop and a laundromat. The door was slightly ajar, the paint peeling around the edges. She hesitated for a moment before stepping inside. The office was cluttered, papers and files stacked haphazardly on every surface. A faint smell of coffee and old books lingered in the air. Behind the desk sat an older man with graying hair and sharp eyes. He looked up as Lisa entered, his expression guarded. "Can I help you?" he asked, his voice rough, but not unkind. Lisa hesitated, unsure of how much to reveal. "I'm looking into a case from over 20 years ago," she said finally. "A man and his daughter went missing. Their names are Mark and Emily. I found your number on an old missing person poster." Joe's eyes narrowed slightly, and he leaned back in his chair, studying her. "You family?" Lisa nodded. "Mark was my husband. Emily is my daughter." For a moment, Joe said nothing. Then he leaned forward, his elbows resting on the desk. "I remember that case. It was one of the strangest ones I've ever worked on. There were too many loose ends, too many people who didn't want me asking questions." Lisa's heart raced. "What do you mean?" Joe gestured for her to sit, and she took a chair across from him. He opened a drawer and pulled out an old file, the edges worn and yellowed with age. The official story was that they went missing while on vacation, but there were whispers about something bigger. People in that town didn't like outsiders digging around, and when I started asking questions, I got a lot of doors slammed in my face. He flipped through the file, showing Lisa copies of old police reports and witness statements. There was a fire at a cabin not long after they disappeared. The authorities said it was unrelated, but I never believed that. The timing was too perfect. Lisa leaned closer, her eyes scanning the documents. "Did you find anything that pointed to where they might have gone?" Joe shook his head. "Not exactly, but I found enough to know that someone didn't want them found. I got a warning one night. An anonymous note slipped under my door. It said to drop the case or face the consequences." Lisa felt a chill run down her spine. "Did you stop?" Joe looked at her, his expression serious. "I didn't have a choice. A week later, my office was broken into and most of my files were destroyed. I kept what I could, but after that, I knew I was being watched. Lisa sat back, her mind racing. Do you still think they're alive? Joe hesitated, then nodded slowly. I think Mark is. I don't know about the girl. There was something about the way he disappeared. It felt calculated, like he was running from something. Lisa's thoughts went to the letter she had received. If Mark was still alive, why had he waited so long to reach out? And what had he been running from all these years? She thanked Joe and promised to keep him updated on anything she found. As she left the office, her mind was spinning with possibilities. Back in her car, Lisa took a moment to collect her thoughts. She glanced at the address Joe had given her, a location where Mark and Emily had reportedly been seen before the fire. It was on the outskirts of the neighboring town, a secluded area surrounded by dense forest. Lisa decided to drive there, hoping to find some trace of her family. When she arrived, she found a small, run-down shack partially hidden by overgrown bushes and trees. It looked abandoned, but Lisa felt a strange pull toward it. She stepped out of the car and approached cautiously, her heart pounding. The door creaked as she pushed it open, revealing a dark, musty interior. Inside, she found remnants of someone's life, an old chair, a broken lamp, and a table covered in dust. But what caught her attention was a small pile of papers in the corner. She picked them up, her breath catching as she realized they were drawings. Childlike, with crude stick figures and bright colors. One of them depicted a man and a little girl standing by a tree. The girl had written "Daddy and me" at the bottom in shaky letters. Tears filled Lisa's eyes as she clutched the drawing to her chest. It was Emily's. There was no doubt in her mind. But why had it been left here? And why did it seem like someone wanted her to find it? The questions felt heavier now, the answers just out of reach. As Lisa stepped outside, the sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows across the clearing. She turned to head back to her car, but she froze when she saw something glinting in the fading light. It was a camera hidden among the trees, its lens pointed directly at the shack. Someone had been watching her. Lisa's breath caught in her throat as she stood frozen, staring at the camera. The lens seemed to shimmer in the fading light, and for a split second, she felt the weight of being watched more acutely than ever before. Her mind raced. Who had placed the camera here, and why was it aimed directly at the shack? She knew now that the stakes had risen far beyond anything she had anticipated. This wasn't just a search for her missing family anymore. It was becoming a dangerous game, and she was in the middle of it. She slowly backed away, her eyes never leaving the camera. She needed answers, but she knew that taking one wrong step could lead to more questions than she could handle. The quiet of the woods seemed to press in on her, amplifying the sound of her heartbeat, as if nature itself was holding its breath, waiting for her next move. She turned and quickly walked back to her car, her footsteps quick and purposeful, the sense of being pursued heavier with every step. When she reached the car, she didn't look back. Her hands were shaking as she slid into the driver's seat, the engine roaring to life with a harsh jolt. The moment the car moved, she felt an inexplicable relief, but that fleeting comfort vanished as quickly as it came. There was no denying it now. Someone had been tracking her every move, and the moment she had found the camera, she knew that the person watching her wasn't just keeping tabs. They were waiting for her to discover the truth. But what was the truth? What were they trying to hide? She glanced nervously in the rearview mirror as she drove out of the clearing, her eyes scanning for any sign of movement in the woods. Her phone buzzed again, pulling her from her spiraling thoughts. It was David. She answered immediately, desperate for a grounding voice. "Lisa, where are you?" David's voice was tight with worry. "You okay?" "I don't know," she muttered, trying to steady her breath. "I just found something, a camera, hidden in the woods, pointed directly at the shack." David's silence on the other end of the line sent a chill down her spine. "That's bad news. Someone's been following you. You have to be careful. Did you get anything else?" Lisa hesitated. She wanted to tell him about the drawings she'd found, but the unease in her chest was too much to ignore. "I found something, drawings of Emily. But David, this is bigger than I thought. Someone doesn't want me to find out what happened. And now, they're watching me. I don't know what to do." There was a brief pause before David spoke again, his voice low and urgent. "Listen, you need to get out of there. Come back to the hotel, and we'll figure this out. You're not alone in this." "I can't," she said, the words coming out with more conviction than she expected. "I'm too close. I need to find out what happened to them. I need to know what they were running from." David let out a sigh, the sound of frustration clear in his tone. "I understand, but please, don't take unnecessary risks. Come back, and we'll work together." She glanced at the road ahead, her mind at war with itself. The path she was on was too uncertain, too dangerous to turn back from now. But a part of her understood David's worry. She'd gotten too deep into this mystery. Too many people had tried to keep her from the truth. But now it was more personal than ever. "I'll be fine," she said finally, her voice soft but firm. "I'll check in soon. Just promise me you'll keep looking into Joe Langston. He might know more than he's letting on." David didn't respond right away, but Lisa could hear the concern in his silence. After a moment, he spoke again. "I'll dig into it. Just be careful. I'm trusting you." "I will," she said, though she didn't know if she was convincing either of them. As she hung up, Lisa's eyes narrowed. The camera had to mean something. Someone knew she was getting closer, and they didn't want her to dig any deeper. But who? And why? She glanced at the address Joe had given her, the location where Mark and Emily had been seen before their disappearance, and she made up her mind. She couldn't wait any longer. If she was going to uncover the truth, she had to keep moving forward, no matter what. When she reached the next stretch of road, Lisa noticed something strange. A dark sedan had pulled onto the road behind her, keeping a steady distance. Her heart rate quickened as she tried to calm herself. She couldn't be sure, but the feeling of being followed was too strong to ignore. She glanced at the rearview mirror again. The car was still there, its headlights just visible in the dimming light. She couldn't tell if it was the same car from earlier, but the suspicion gnawed at her. Had they been tracking her all along? With her anxiety rising, Lisa made a sharp turn off the main road, hoping to lose the car. She could feel the tension building in her chest, but when she glanced in the mirror, the sedan followed her without hesitation. Her grip tightened on the steering wheel, and her thoughts raced. She could drive straight to the cabin and risk confronting whoever was following her, or she could keep moving and see where this chase led. Either way, it felt like a choice she couldn't back out of. Lisa decided to lead the car deeper into the woods, hoping that the winding roads and thick trees would make it harder for anyone to keep track of her. The more she twisted through the darkening landscape, the more the pressure mounted. The car behind her was still there, closer now. It wasn't until she turned down an even narrower trail that the sedan hesitated, almost as if it wasn't sure whether to follow. For a split second, Lisa thought she might lose them. Then, just as quickly, the sedan's headlights flared brightly, catching up again. She gritted her teeth and pressed down on the gas. There was no turning back now. This was it. The truth, whatever it was so close she could almost feel it in her bones. Whoever was following her was going to have to make a move soon. The only question was, what would that move be? And how much danger was she truly in? The sound of tires crunching over gravel echoed in the stillness of the woods, and Lisa realized with a sickening feeling that she had led herself into a trap. Lisa's heart pounded in her chest as she pushed the car harder, the tires screeching against the rough terrain. The sedan was right behind her, only inches away now, as if it were daring her to make a mistake. Every sharp turn she made, she could hear the hum of its engine growing louder, relentless. The trees around her seemed to close in tighter with each passing moment, casting long shadows that stretched like fingers trying to grab her. Her breath quickened, a mixture of fear and determination coursing through her veins. She had to shake this car off. She couldn't afford to be trapped. The headlights of the sedan glared menacingly in the rearview mirror, and the closer it got, the more she felt like prey being stalked in the darkness. She took a sudden sharp turn onto a smaller dirt road, the wheels of her car slipping dangerously. The sedan followed, but not as quickly. Lisa's heart skipped a beat as she realized she might have finally lost them. For a brief moment, the tension eased, but just as quickly, the dread returned. She couldn't let her guard down. Not now. Not with everything she had uncovered. Just then, as she slowed down to catch her breath, a figure appeared ahead of her on the road. Lisa slammed her foot down on the brakes, the car screeching to a halt just inches from the man standing in the middle of the path. Her pulse raced as she stared at the stranger, panic flooding her senses. The headlights illuminated his face, revealing a weathered, cold expression. His eyes locked onto hers, and for a moment, she felt paralyzed. Before she could react, the man stepped aside, and behind him, another vehicle emerged from the shadows. A black SUV, its engine idling ominously. The vehicle's headlights flicked on, casting an eerie glow across the scene. Lisa's stomach churned. The people following her weren't just bystanders. They were part of something much bigger, something far more dangerous than she could have ever imagined. The man didn't move toward her car, but instead turned and signaled toward the SUV. The doors opened, and two more people stepped out. They were dressed in dark clothing, their faces obscured by hats and sunglasses. The hairs on the back of Lisa's neck stood up. These people weren't just random pursuers. They were professionals. Whoever they were working for, it wasn't something she could simply walk away from. Lisa's mind raced as she tried to come up with an escape plan. She couldn't sit there in her car, trapped and vulnerable. The stakes had just escalated beyond anything she had expected. The missing persons case had led her to this moment. This confrontation in the middle of the woods. But now, she realized, it was far more than just a case of a lost father and daughter. It was a game with high stakes, and she was now a player in it whether she liked it or not. She quickly shifted her car into reverse, but before she could make a move, the sedan that had been tailing her screeched to a stop behind her. Her pulse quickened as she realized there was no way out. The SUV in front of her and the car behind her created a trap, boxing her in. The man at the front of the SUV stepped forward, his hands raised slightly in a gesture of authority. "Get out of the car," he ordered, his voice steady and cold. Lisa's mind raced, but her body moved before she could think. She threw open the door, jumping out of the car with her heart pounding in her chest. The cold air of the night cut through her like a knife, and her thoughts scrambled as she tried to calculate her next move. Every instinct told her to run, but there was nowhere to go. She had been cornered, and the people around her knew it. The man from the SUV stepped closer, his face still hidden in shadow, but his voice was unmistakably calm. "You've come too far, haven't you? It's time to end this." Lisa clenched her fists, her breath coming in ragged gasps. "What do you want from me?" she demanded, her voice trembling despite her best efforts to sound strong. The man gave a slight, almost imperceptible smirk. "You're not the one asking the questions here. But it's clear you don't know the full story. Maybe you should, if you really want to understand what happened to your family." Lisa's stomach twisted. Every part of her wanted to demand more, but the man's words struck her like a blow to the chest. What did he mean by that? What was the full story, and why had it been kept from her all these years? As she stood there, trapped in the cold night, Lisa's mind circled back to everything she had uncovered so far. The missing people, the strange phone call, the hidden camera, and the eerie drawings she had found. There was something deeply wrong about all of it. And this man, these people were somehow involved in it. "Why don't you come with us?" the man said, his tone almost conversational, as if he was offering her a polite suggestion. "You've been asking questions, but the answers might be more than you're prepared for. We can give you the truth, but you need to trust us." Lisa's heart skipped a beat. The truth. The words echoed in her mind, reverberating with weight. Was she ready to face whatever it was they were hiding? Could she even trust them to tell her the truth? Or was she walking into another trap? Her eyes flicked from one figure to the next. The group surrounding her wasn't just intimidating. They were calculating, purposeful. This wasn't about her being in danger. It was about them wanting something from her. "Who are you?" Lisa asked, her voice shaking with a mixture of fear and frustration. "What do you want from me?" The man didn't answer immediately. Instead, he stepped closer, his gaze piercing through her. "Let's just say that there are some things you're not meant to know." Yet, the air was thick with tension, and Lisa's mind raced as she realized there was more to this than she had imagined. Her search for Mark and Emily was no longer just about a lost family. There were forces at play here, and she had just scratched the surface. As the man took another step toward her, his hand reaching into his jacket, Lisa's body tensed. She had to make a decision, and she had to make it now. But before she could act, something unexpected happened. One of the figures behind the SUV moved forward with a sudden urgency. The shift in the air was palpable. Everything seemed to happen in an instant. The figures, the dark shadows, the strange sense of danger closing in. But just before Lisa could react, a flash of movement cut through the chaos, and the night suddenly felt even darker than before. Lisa's heart hammered in her chest as the figure in the shadows moved toward her, and for a moment, everything seemed to freeze. The man from the SUV had reached into his jacket, his hand lingering there like he was about to pull out something that could change everything. Her instincts screamed at her to run, but her body felt paralyzed, rooted to the spot by the intensity of the situation. What was about to happen? What was he going to do? Then, without warning, the sudden movement behind her, a loud crack of breaking branches, made Lisa whip around, her breath caught in her throat. Her eyes widened in disbelief. Standing there, barely visible through the dark trees, was Mark. The father she had been searching for, the one whose disappearance had haunted her for so long, was standing right in front of her. The man from the SUV stiffened, his expression flickering with something: surprise, confusion, or perhaps fear. Lisa barely processed the moment, too overwhelmed by what she was seeing. Mark was alive. After all these years, he was here in front of her. Dad? Lisa's voice was barely a whisper, but the word echoed in the still night air. The man she had long defined, the missing piece to the puzzle of her family, was alive, standing before her. But there was something strange in his eyes, something that didn't match the man she had known. Mark didn't immediately respond. Instead, he stepped forward, his movements slow and deliberate. The figures from the SUV tensed, their eyes darting between him and Lisa, as though waiting for something to unfold. Lisa's pulse quickened, and her mind raced. What was going on here? Why had her father disappeared? Why was he part of this twisted web? Lisa, Mark finally spoke, his voice rough and unfamiliar, like a man who hadn't spoken in years. You shouldn't have come here. It's too late. You don't understand what's at stake. What's at stake? Lisa asked, her words laced with a mix of confusion and anger. You've been gone for 22 years, and now you show up here? With these people? Who are they? What are you all involved in? Mark shook his head, his eyes darkening. It's not that simple. I didn't disappear on my own. They're not who you think they are. They've been watching us. Watching you? He motioned toward the people in the SUV, who were still standing, waiting for his cue. They've been keeping an eye on us for a long time, Lisa. They'll do anything to protect the truth. They'll do anything to stop you from finding it. Lisa's mind reeled, the words like a punch to the gut. What was her father saying? The truth? She was no closer to understanding the entire picture. There were so many questions, but she couldn't make sense of them all. Who were these people? Why had they been watching her? And why had Mark allowed himself to vanish all these years? What was it that he was hiding from her? You don't have to be involved in this anymore, Mark continued, his voice low but urgent. Just walk away, Lisa. You've done enough? Her eyes narrowed. You think I'm just going to walk away from this? After everything I've learned? No. I need to know the truth. I need to know what happened to you, to Emily, why you disappeared, why everything's been a lie. For the first time since he had stepped into the clearing, Mark's expression faltered. His gaze softened, and for a fleeting moment, Lisa could see the father she had lost, the man who had once been so full of life and love. But it was gone in an instant, replaced by something colder, harder. The man from the SUV stepped forward, his eyes fixed on Mark. You've made your choice. Now she makes hers. And with that, everything changed. In a flash, the air around them crackled with tension. Mark's face hardened, and without a word, he turned and bolted into the trees, disappearing into the darkness. Lisa's heart leaped, and she instinctively started to chase after him. But the man from the SUV was quicker. He reached out, grabbing her arm with an iron grip, pulling her back. No! Lisa screamed, struggling against his hold. But the more she fought, the stronger his grip became. Let me go. I need to find him. He's my father. You don't understand. But the man's face was unreadable, and he didn't release her. You don't get to make the decisions anymore. It's too dangerous for you to follow him. Let go of me! Lisa shouted, her voice shaking with fury. She was frantic now, desperate to find Mark, to make sense of everything that had just happened. But the man wouldn't budge. "I'm not letting you go," he said coldly, his tone final. Her mind raced. If Mark was running, that could only mean one thing. He was trying to protect her. From what? From them? But why? The truth was out there, but the more she uncovered, the more she realized how deep this tangled web went. She couldn't just stop now. She couldn't let her father slip away again. Then a loud crash came from behind them. Lisa turned, her breath catching in her throat, and saw Mark, now with a gun in his hand, his face twisted with something dark. He was holding it up, pointing it at the man from the SUV. "Let her go now." Mark's voice was steady but full of warning. Lisa froze, her eyes wide. Everything she thought she understood shattered in an instant. Mark, her father, wasn't just a man caught in a conspiracy. He was part of it, and now he was threatening the people who had been watching her, protecting the very truth she had been trying to uncover. The man from the SUV hesitated, then slowly let go of Lisa's arm, stepping back as Mark advanced. Lisa didn't know what to feel. Betrayal, confusion, fear, all of it coursed through her. Her father had been hiding the truth, and now he was pointing a weapon at the people who had been following her all along. What was going on? Who could she trust? "Go back," Mark said, his voice strained. "You don't belong here. This is bigger than you think." But Lisa wasn't listening. She couldn't let go of the truth now. She had come too far. Mark's betrayal wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. As the figures in the SUV backed away, their retreat leaving a sense of uncertainty hanging in the air, Lisa's thoughts raced. She couldn't go back. Not now. Not after everything she had learned. The story wasn't finished yet. There was one more question that still needed to be answered. Mark's face softened, his gaze flicking between Lisa and the darkness behind them. But before he could say another word, the sound of sirens echoed through the trees, drawing nearer. Their time had run out. The sirens grew louder, slicing through the tension of the night air, and Lisa's heart pounded in her chest. She had no idea what was going to happen next. Her mind was reeling. Her father, standing there with a gun in his hand, the mysterious figures in the SUV, the hidden truths, and now the flashing lights getting closer. This wasn't just a family story anymore. It was something far more complex, something she couldn't unravel on her own. Mark glanced at the flashing lights, then back at Lisa. His face was a mask of conflicting emotions, guilt, fear, and maybe just a trace of hope. But Lisa wasn't sure if she could trust any of it anymore. She wanted answers, not more confusion. Every word he spoke felt like a veil being pulled off a much larger truth. And every piece she uncovered only made her realize how much more there was to find. "You have to go, Lisa," Mark said, his voice a low rasp. "You can't stay here." Lisa shook her head, the reality of the situation settling in. "I'm not leaving without you," she said, her voice firm but shaky. She had already lost him once. She wasn't going to let it happen again. The pieces of the puzzle were all around her, and she was as close to understanding the whole picture. If she left now, she might never get the chance to finish the story. The sound of the sirens was deafening now, but it wasn't the sirens that made Lisa freeze. It was the movement behind them. From the woods, two more figures emerged, walking with a sense of purpose, their silhouettes barely visible in the dim light. The man from the SUV, who had been holding her back earlier, turned toward them, his expression unreadable. Mark's grip on the gun tightened, but it wasn't aimed at Lisa. It was aimed at the newcomers. "Get back," he commanded, his voice steady despite the mounting chaos. "You have no idea what you're dealing with." The figures didn't stop. They continued walking toward them, their faces now visible as the headlights from Lisa's car illuminated their path. They were older than the others, men and women who looked like they had seen too much, lived through too many things. Their eyes were hard, calculating. Lisa's mind raced, trying to connect the dots. These people weren't random. They weren't strangers who had appeared out of nowhere. They had been involved in everything from the start: the disappearances, the manipulation, the lies. But who were they working for? What was the truth that Mark was so desperately trying to protect? "We're not here to fight, Mark," one of the figures said, his voice calm, but with an undercurrent of authority. "This has gone on long enough. You know what's at stake." Mark didn't lower the gun. "I won't let you take her," he said, his voice filled with conviction. "She's not part of this." "Not part of this?" the man asked, his brow furrowing. "She's already in it, Mark. She's been in it from the moment she started asking questions. You can't keep her in the dark forever." Lisa's breath caught in her throat. She had heard enough. Her whole life had been shaped by secrets and lies, and now the truth was within her grasp. But it was a truth that seemed to shatter everything she had believed about her family. "You've been running from them this whole time, haven't you?" Lisa said, her voice trembling but determined. "You've been hiding, protecting me, but for what? To keep me in the dark? To keep me safe from what?" Mark's eyes flickered with something, a flash of regret, but then he hardened again. "I didn't want this for you. I didn't want you to be dragged into it. But you've been chasing shadows, Lisa. The truth isn't what you think it is. It's much darker." Before Lisa could respond, the sound of tires skidding on gravel interrupted them. A black car came into view, its headlights cutting through the darkness, and it was headed straight toward them. The newcomers didn't flinch. They simply turned, acknowledging the arrival of the car with a cold, calculating look. Lisa's heart skipped a beat. Whoever was in that car was connected to everything. She could feel it in her bones. This wasn't just a family mystery anymore. It was something much larger, and the stakes were higher than she could have ever imagined. The car screeched to a stop just a few feet away, and the door swung open. A tall figure stepped out, their silhouette hidden by the darkness. But then the figure stepped forward, and Lisa's breath caught as she recognized the face. It was someone she hadn't seen in years, someone she never thought she would see again. Her mother. Lisa. Her mother's voice was soft, but there was a sharp edge to it. "We need to talk." Everything stopped. The air grew thick, suffocating. Lisa's mind swirled as she tried to process what was happening. Her mother, the one person who had been absent for so long, was standing there, as though she had always been part of this tangled web. Why hadn't she come sooner? Why had she let all of this happen? Mark's expression faltered when he saw her. His grip on the gun loosened, but he didn't lower it. "You shouldn't be here, Claire," he said, his voice strained. "This isn't the place for you." But Claire didn't seem fazed. She took a step forward, her gaze meeting Lisa's. "I know you have questions," she said softly. "And I know I haven't been there for you. But you're not the only one looking for answers." Lisa's thoughts were spinning. Everything she thought she knew was being turned upside down. Her father had been hiding the truth. Her mother had been missing. But now she was here, unexplained, silent, like she had known more all along. And the people surrounding them were part of a far-reaching conspiracy, one that stretched beyond her family, beyond even her understanding. Her mother's eyes softened, her voice quiet but resolute. "I'm sorry, Lisa. I'm sorry for everything. But there's no going back now. You've uncovered something that has to be dealt with. It's bigger than us, and it's time you knew the full story. But you need to be ready." Lisa's mind raced, but one thing was clear. She couldn't keep running from the truth anymore. Everything was about to change. She had the answers, but now the question was whether she was strong enough to face them. Mark lowered the gun, his face heavy with guilt and sorrow. "You were always meant to know the truth, Lisa. But not like this." And then, as the night seemed to hold its breath, Lisa knew that the journey she had started was far from over. The truth had come to light, but its weight was only just beginning to settle in. What came next was unknown, but Lisa had already made her choice. She wouldn't back down, not now. The story of her family was her own, and no matter what the future held, she would face it head-on. With a deep breath, Lisa turned toward her mother, ready to finally hear the full story, whatever it might be. The questions had been answered, but now, the real truth was about to be revealed.